Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of RPGs with Paddy. I'm Paddy. Today we'll be looking at one of the most highly regarded Cthulhu by Gaslight supplements out there, the Golden Dawn. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Now, a little clarification before we begin. This book is intended mainly for keepers. Most of the information is not to be known by the players. However, there are some appendices at the back which may help players out. So I've split this review into two videos. This video will cover only the player-facing material, and a forthcoming video, hopefully early next week, will cover the more substantial keeper information. And of course, there will also be separate videos dealing with each of the 4 scenarios in this book. So that means that everyone can watch this review from start to finish without worrying about spoilers. Just before we start, I want to point one thing out. This book has been lauded as a must-have Cthulhu by Gaslight book. And I just want to clarify what that means. This book has almost no rules for playing Cthulhu by Gaslight. It doesn't really deal with London in general. It doesn't specifically deal with the time period. Rather, it provides a narrative framework through which the investigators can be connected. And it's set within the Golden Dawn organization, which is set in the Gaslight period. So it's not an overall setting guide for the Gaslight era. Rather, it's like a faction guide for running games connected in some way to the Golden Dawn. In that sense, it is excellent. But I don't want people running out to getting the book thinking, I need this to play Cthulhu by Gaslight. It's a very rare and expensive book. And it's only if you want to run games connected to the Golden Dawn or any kind of secret society. So, with that cleared up, let's get started. The Golden Dawn was published by Pagan Publishing in 1996, and it represented a collaborative effort by many great and well-renowned authors. The player-facing material is all included in the appendices, so let's look at those. First, we get the bibliography and suggested reading. This is an excellent selection of sources, both historical and fictional, providing inspiration to the keepers and the players. Oh, well, usually one keeper, but... one aspect that is better than other bibliographies I've seen is that there are many comments on why this particular book might be of interest. Unfortunately, some of them do reference some of the adventures in the main book, and as such they could have small spoilers for players. So keepers, do be a little bit careful what ones you recommend to your players. As an example of what this is like, here are a few examples. So by Israel Regardi, I'm never sure how to say his name, The Golden Dawn, 6th edition at this stage. And they say that this is a complete collection of the Golden Dawn's teaching, curricula, and ritual. Essentially a do-it-yourself Golden Dawn. Keepers who want to see what the rituals were like, take a look. So it's not just saying the name of the book, but it's also giving you a reason why it might be of interest. And another one, in the fictional setting, is by Tim Powers, The Anubis Gates, from 1983. And it's described as one of the best Victorian set fantasy novels ever. Time travelers, gypsies, Egyptian music, and much more. Highly recommended, as are Powers' On Stranger Tides and The Stress of Her Regard. I haven't read any of those. But that's just an example of the high-level bibliography there. They're giving you quite a substantial list of books and texts that might be of interest to you, and explaining why, so you don't have to go chasing all of these up if you're not interested in that particular point. And of course, as this book was released in 1996, There will, of course, be more recent editions, which you might make if you're making it now, but this is still an excellent source. So in the next appendix, we get the player's version of the history of the Golden Dawn. It represents what an average member of the Golden Dawn would know. So first we start with the Rosicrucian legend, and I might be pronouncing that wrong, but that's fine, where Christian Rosenkreuz travelled from originally Austria to Damcar to Egypt to Fez and then to Germany, Spain and then Germany. And while he was doing this, he picked up multiple languages and occult knowledge at each place he went, so building on his knowledge. Then when he was in Germany, he founded a monastery and he put to writing a lot of the knowledge that he had gained and started the Fraternity of the Rosy Cross. And their teaching was basically that they would keep transferring down this knowledge to a successor before the former would die. But actually, when Rosenkreuz himself died in 1484, most of the writings that he had made and his body disappeared. But then in 1604, when the temple was undergoing some alterations, they found some sacred tablets, the original works of the founder, and the tomb of Rosenkreuz himself, and his body had not been decayed. So those teachings were used by various Masons interested in the occult, and the new order kind of described themselves, or called themselves, the Rosicrucian Society. So now jumping ahead to 1887 and right into the Gaslight era, a member of the Rosicrucians, Dr. William Wynne Westcott, WWW, he obtained and translated a secret manuscript which was written in a cipher. And it included a lot of information, including the grades that could be used for a new society. The translated information also led him to Fraulein Springer, the head of a German Rosicrucian society. And with her permission, he founded an English branch of Die Goldene Dämmerung, or the Golden Dawn. So Westcott worked with Samuel MacGregor Mathers and Dr. Woodman to create the Golden Dawn Society in England, and in 1888 they founded the third temple of the Golden Dawn, called Isis Urania. Number one was Fraulein Sprengel's one in Germany, and a second one had previously existed, but they lost the manuscript, and after that they ceased to exist. So at the moment, in this time, there's one in Germany by Fraulein Sprengel, and then there's one in England called Isis Urania. And in England, the Golden Dawn was a place to study the occult, and they had grades like similar to what the Freemasons had. But critical difference is the Golden Dawn also allowed women. And that is one thing that I think is fantastic for role-playing purposes. A lot of kind of older Call of Cthulhu and Cthulhu by Gaslight scenarios talk about women weren't allowed in, and I think that really can hurt the gameplay as well. But using the Golden Dawn, of course they're very suitable for the time, but also they allowed women in. Anyway, the grades themselves were split into the Outer Order, the Inner Order, and then special grades for the Secret Chiefs. And they had the following grades, which I'll show here. Each grade had two numbers. The first number runs from 0 to 10, and the second number runs from 10 to 0. And these numbers are connected with the teachings of the Tree of Life. And it shows how connected you are to the physical realm and the spiritual realm, respectively. And each degree that you achieved taught you new rituals and new knowledge. And every member, when you joined and when you got up to the inner order, you would create a motto, usually in Latin. And that Motto is how members refer to each other. To reach a new grade requires a decent amount of study and tests at the end. And of course you will pay for membership. So there's a little bit extra, but that's basically it. And in the next section we move on to character creation. It stresses that in this game, so when you're playing in the Golden Dawn, very few, if any, of the players should be lower class. But then we get to character creation proper, and basically it follows the standard rules for creating a character, but it's very usefully summarized here briefly. A brand new Call of Cthulhu player might need more information from like the Keeper's Guide, but experienced players will fly through all of this. The first major change is when it comes to credit rating. In this, you will simply roll a 1d10 for your credit rating and look at this table. There is also a new skill, etiquette, and etiquette can be used in place of most of the communication skills to see if the players behave correctly given that situation. Anyone lower than upper class, so if you rolled lower than 8 on that previous 1d10, you will have a base stat of 0 in etiquette. From lower upper class and above, so a roll of 8, 9, or 10, men will start at 20% etiquette and women will start at 40% etiquette. And the reasoning given for this is that women at the time were not supposed to do much other than support their husbands, and so they were taught more about etiquette than men were. After that, we are given a list of questions to help fill out the character more, talking about their religion, their school, their friends, their family, etc. And overall, I think this section is great. It's very fast to create new characters, and the extra questions help level it out. However, the roll 1d10 for credit rating and class is a little bit rough. Although none of them are lower class, the worst you can roll is lower middle class. And that means that no matter what you roll, that character can participate in the Golden Dawn adventures and can be a member of the Golden Dawn. But the difference between a 1 and a 10 is a credit rating of 16 or 99 is a huge difference. And if you look at the numbers again, I'll put them up on screen now. There's a steady progression from 1 to 8, but then getting a 9 or a 10, you can see that the credit rating is enormous, a huge increase there. And so I guess, yeah, we are talking about really upper class and nobility, but it creates such a huge disparity. Anyway, my 2 cents. So on to the next section. Here we will learn about the outer order curriculum, and that is like the grades. So you will get a certain number of points, not to be confused with character creation points, but you'll get a certain number of points based on your statistics. And you can spend your points to buy grades and skills within the Golden Dawn. You can also buy contacts. This is not a case of you paying money to skip levels. Rather, your statistics, intelligence, willpower, occult knowledge, and stuff like that, show how far you have already progressed in the society by the time the scenario begins. And just to point out contacts, you have a chance of gaining an ally or an enemy or possibly a neutral there as well. And it'll be a roll of the dice. After you have decided what level you're starting at, between subsequent scenarios you can study and take exams for higher levels. And I guess during a long scenario you might have a chance during that to even advance. When you take a test, you pass on a successful occult roll or a halved idea roll, which is a hard success on an idea roll using the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu rules. If you fail the roll, you can try again 2 months later. And each time you get a 5% bonus to your roll to represent the extra 2 months of study that you've done. Each grade that you achieve increases your occult skill within certain limits. All members will know you have to learn this to become a member really, will know the pentagram ritual, which protects against harmful spirits. You can also gain abilities in alchemy, which is basically chemistry and pharmacy, astrology, cartomancy, geomancy, and different esoteric languages. And so, as mentioned before, all members will have a motto, probably in Latin, and they describe it here. However, some more examples would have been nice, because not a lot of people speak Latin these days. But we are directed to look in Webster's unabridged dictionary for this as well. As I say, there are many phrases in different languages, particularly in Latin. The following appendix is only for keepers, so I will skip it here. The section after that is miscellany, which is an assortment of information for keepers and players alike. We learn about photography in the Victorian era, and it's very surprising to know that it was being used at this time. Although it might be very expensive, or no, it will be very expensive, and it can be quite dangerous because of the chemicals involved in the process. But this just means that the investigators may have use of one, or might encounter some during their adventures. We also get some new rules for sword fighting, which I think is cool and an excellent addition to the Cthulhu by Gaslight setting. However, these add a little bit of complication, and it might make a combat clunky with multiple sword combats going on. But basically, quite simple really. You can do 2 things on your turn, from attack, parry, and dodge. And the only one of note really is when the attacker has a successful attack and the defender has a successful parry, the defending weapon takes half the normal damage. If that damage exceeds the weapon's HP, it is broken, and any additional damage is passed on to the player. But the weapon damage is not cumulative, so it resets after each attack. It's only if it suffers one attack of enormous damage that it would shatter. All other combinations of attack, parry, and dodge kind of conclude as you would expect. But we also get introduced to some extended optional rules that add in actions such as severing limbs, disarming your opponents, knockback strikes, and stuff like that. And next we get a full explanation of the new skills, which I mentioned above, which are astrology, cartomancy, dowsing, which is a method, traditionally is a method of using like a forked stick to try and find water, but it's used as a divination skill by the Golden Dawn. And of course, etiquette as well. Then we are given the new spells that come up here, and the book reminds us several times throughout that these are not exactly the same as Call of Cthulhu spells. Rather, they are mostly Golden Dawn rituals. I decided not to actually mention them here, as they could be just a little bit spoilery. So I'll, rather than tell you, I will leave it to the judgment of each keeper what to share with their players. And the following section, Appendix G, is all of the handouts from the 4 scenarios of this book, and as such is off limits to players until they encounter them in play. And after that we get a character sheet and a simple calendar, just for the later years. So that is all you're going to get on the player side. It's not so much, but it's a simple introduction to the basic outline of the Golden Dawn. There is enough player information to start role-playing in this as part of this organization. And gradually you will learn more as the keeper gives you more information throughout the scenarios. For players, I would not recommend buying this book for two reasons. First, about 80% of this book is for keepers' eyes only. So you won't be able to use it unless you want to be a keeper. But you should try being a keeper. It's not that hard and it can be so much fun. We always need more keepers. And the second reason is that this book is out of print and very, very expensive. So if you are only a player and you buy this, you'll be spending a lot of money and you can only really look at a very small amount of it. If by any chance you see this for sale down below, say $50, I doubt it very much. At the moment it's about $200, $250. If you see it south of $50 for players, I'd say pick it up. Other than that, I would say leave it. But those two caveats aside, this is an excellent book. It provides the background connecting the investigators so that they can come together for the scenarios. It's firmly set in the Gaslight period, and it can help, having all of this information can help create a really immersive setting. So there is a reason that this book is so revered and one of the most sought after out-of-print books in the Cthulhu product line. If you are interested in this, but are a player, ask your keeper to check out the next video in my series, which goes into all of the secret keeper information. That video should be out very early next week. And after that, I'll be doing individual reviews for each of the 4 scenarios in the book. But that's going to be it for today. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great day.